So this is a buzzsaw taking black and Srandom taking white. The opening looks pretty straightforward. No mistakes on either side. Everything looks pretty modern as well. Yeah, this looks great. Both sides playing, near perfectly.
I think the choice of just Giuseppe's in the direction, it's just like good.
I would say, yeah, really nothing to fault here. I struggle a little with moves like this because whether to say it's good or bad, because this is only ever going to be territory for black. It's never going to be territory for white. So what I would probably focus on is maybe a move over here with the idea of kind of reducing this. So if black chooses to play something like this, now white can build up a framework over here. When you play a move like this, black can, white could try to fight, but it's because black has this move at f16, it's a little tough. And so now if you change the order of moves a little bit, play here, play here, play here, now this move at L17 is maybe not perfectly placed. Maybe you'd rather have, if you do this similar order, maybe you'd rather have the stone at K17, or you'd rather have an attachment at P17. So it's hard to say this is a huge mistake by any stretch, but I'm just not seeing exactly what it's going to be doing, other than separating what looks to be two strong groups. If I were black here, I would probably, or sorry, if I were here, I'd play here, because if I were black here, I'd want to play here.
Yeah, that's kind of building both sides. It's important for white and black. So
yeah, exactly. Yeah, all looks okay though. I would say this move at Q12 might be a little bit questionable, because if I were white, I would want to target this R16 area, or sorry, R17, with the idea that, maybe I can live here, or at the very least get some compensation on the outside, or even, if I'm strong enough, potentially play something like this if I have enough influence here. When you play a move like this kind of peep move, it's going to make it so that this group becomes stronger. And so now if white plays something like this, black can play here. Whereas if you change the order, white plays here, black plays here, now there's an attachment move over here that can cause black some headache. So maybe a questionable exchange, especially since white's center influence isn't quite clear yet. I think that this is still probably a pretty large point on the board, because you're going to want to target maybe that B7 weakness at some point. So I think that C10 might be a little bit larger than K3, especially because. Oh, sorry, what was that, Patrick?
Isn't Q13 usually paired with something like Q15? Like when white plays Q13, the idea would be so that white can play Q15 and block off black. Is it? So I was wondering why there's no follow-up after Q13.
Oh, well, I mean, again, I think that Q13 might have been a little bit questionable to begin with. If you are going to follow up, it would be something like this. You were saying?
Yes.
It's possible, but again, what's white building towards? It's hard to say, right? Because black can separate these two stones, and now this white wall is not going to be super effective. So I think that making these exchanges now with no white center influence doesn't really make sense. There are certainly situations in which you play Q13 followed by Q15, but I think here it doesn't really help to.
Okay.
And actually what you could do is something like this, and build up a nicer framework like that, or just something like this. So there are a couple of ways you can build a nice framework here, but I don't think it pays to build the framework now, because what I would rather be doing is preserving the weakness that black has over here.
yeah, this way you just make him stronger and then it's done. And you didn't really get a compensation on the other side, so.
Exactly, yeah. So again, these exchanges here for like it's kind of similar to this move at Q13, is we're reducing the center influence, but what we're really doing is we're taking away Aji. We're making this white group much stronger, and it's hard to say that these two stones on the top have really helped very much. So what I would want to focus on is preserving this H3 weakness here. By playing here, what I've really done is one, created another weak group for myself. So white has the option of trying to attack it, which wouldn't be a bad idea. But even still, I've also taken away a potential weak spot with this K3 stone. And have just given black territory in exchange for 2 floating stones in the center of the board.
Why is playing on you know, on the other side on like D or C10 better than playing on the lower side? If you were white,
Sure. So
why is that better than, it looks the same, right?
a little bit different. One, white has more stones at the top, so the amount of influence that white's giving here is more important. The other part is this black group is very strong. This white group also fairly strong. There's a weakness at B7 or B9 where you can actually put a little bit of pressure on the group. So that's why I would probably focus more on the left side of the board, because I think there's more territory to be had here, and I also think that there is more weakness for black here.
Okay.
Similarly, what you don't want to have happen is black play something like this, and then play something like that, and make this entire side his, or hers in this case. So this would be kind of the result that I would expect black to get here, where black actually makes territory and severely reduces white's side over here. We're not, and I will say, we're not talking huge differences in percentages. This is just my natural inclination. So possible that an AI might give you something different, but for me, this feels like the larger, more interesting side. I think probably white could get away with playing here. You know, white has a lot of strength here. Black's going to have to run out, and white can always connect back over here and make these stones a little bit heavier too. So this wouldn't be a terrible result for white. You know, even extending one more, something like this would be okay. But this is fine too. I mean, it's just a lot of territory for white. This is, you know, again, black is extending here. What is black getting? A weak group for itself, right? Like when white comes here, black has made no territory with this group. It's not really connecting to these stones. It's not really connecting to these stones. White's just solidified its area over here. This is just a good result for white. Maybe this is definitely a mistake by black. Black should really play here. I guess there's some fear here that maybe there's going to be reduced to 1 eye, but you know, it's very easy to capture the stone. It's very clear to see this is 4 liberties for black and only 2 liberties for white. So just connecting here is a lost opportunity to play at D7. And having the stone at D7 is really nice because it, one, reduces the liberties on these 4 stones, and it also helps try to connect these stones a little bit better. So if white plays away, black is basically connected here. And now white gets to get a nicer attack with these black stones. Bless you.
Oh, thank you.
I'm not sure I see the purpose of this clamp here. I guess the thought is that if black plays here, you get to seal it in, which would be nice. But I think that you know, there's really no issue with black just extending out. If white plays here, black can cut. White plays here, and black can net these stones without any issue. And so this would be I would say, a positive exchange for black. So this clamp seems questionable. What happened in the game? So you played here. So this ends up becoming a nice exchange for white because white gets to Atari here. Black connects, and then white plays here, and is still keeping up the pressure on these stones while also building a framework. So I think black here fell into white's trap, and should be extending here instead. So I still think this is still, even though, you know, black got a slightly better result, this is a lot of influence for white here. And so I think that white's ending up the richer of this result, because black's really not getting any territory here. There's still some weaknesses that exist in this group. And, you know, so if black plays away, you can play here, black has to connect, you can cut. There's really not much that black's getting here. I think that maybe this cut here might be a little bit too aggressive because there are these weaknesses that exist down here. So I don't know if I would necessarily fight this fight right away. It's possible something like this might happen. Maybe this is the way to play. Maybe you give it up, but I still think that black ends up a little bit better than in the game because, or than the variation I just showed, because now black has a better connection over here. There's still cutting points at G3, at M2, and at K2. So I would say this white group isn't as strong. So I think that maybe the cut here is just more aggressive than you need to be. I would be happy just to maybe play something like this. Get territory here, create weakness here, and build influence on the outside. Because on the territory on the board, I think it's pretty even, right? I think beforehand, it wasn't like black had a ton of territory or white had a ton of territory. This corner and this corner are roughly the same. This corner and this side was roughly the same. This corner and this corner, this side and this corner was roughly the same. So it was a pretty even game. So now white's just getting cash, whereas black's just flying in the middle of the game. So perhaps a little bit aggressive. We also have to remember that if black just plays here, white plays here, there's this cut here too. And it's pretty hard for white to deal with this cut, right? If white plays here, connect, it's these stones are floating. It's not quite clear how they're going to live. I wouldn't be too happy here as black, as white, excuse me. But who knows, right? Maybe it works. I'm not sure. I'm not 100% sure. Black should definitely play here in this particular situation. If white cuts here, there's no cut because black can always play here. So black has nothing to fear in this area, which means that black has to try to attack these 3 stones and these 4 stones. So white would probably jump and black would play here. But it's not an easy fight for black. So that kind of goes back to why I wouldn't necessarily like this result to begin with, but it's playable for black. I think it's probably closer to the truth. But white can also, if I were white here, I'd probably play here. If white extends, now this is going to be a good fight for white. Something like this happens where white can seal in this group and build a nice position on the outside. I know that I went through that kind of quickly, but all that to say is you don't want to let black get this L7 stone. So if white can get it first, black plays here, white plays here. Even if black plays here, this is still a very nice result for white. White gets a ton of influence on the outside. It preserves its side territory here, and black really hasn't gained all that much on the lower side.
I have a question. How do you use that influence that white just got? It's like, it's not clear to me that white will make points in the middle with them. It just.
I think it's, to me, I think it's actually relatively simple for white to make points, right? Because even if black plays a move like this, all white needs to do is play something like this, and you're building out this framework. So you'll get something out of it. You don't need to be super aggressive with it. And the other part is if black tries to play in here, it just means you get a stronger attack on the stone, right? So if black really tries to make it so that white gets no territory in the center, well, it's going to have to deal with a lot more strength over here. Certainly if imagine if the variation was like this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty clear to see that white's never going to make territory in the center, right? Imagine if the situation was, just like this. Okay, white's probably going to make some territory center, but territory in the center, but it's not as easy because there's some weaknesses with a move like this or ways to invade. But because white has so much influence in the center, it's going to be a lot harder for black to really get a good attack. Like black can never play here, right? Because white can very easily seal it in. Black's going to have to go further away, something like this, in order to actually connect and live.
But the whole time I'm looking at the weakness at Q12, and that's the way into the Moya, no matter what. Or you can go from, so from that right side, it seems like it's too.
Well, so Q12 actually isn't that big a deal because cut, play here, you give up this 1 stone, not that big a deal, and you're building up that center territory.
I see. Yeah, you still get one side somehow.
And if you play here, you can also, I think this is fine. If black chooses to play here, you play here, and you connect out, you still build up that center territory. So I think white's going to get something here. But again, it also makes fights anywhere else on the board much better. And the other part is, what has black gained? Nothing.
Yeah, you didn't give anything for the thickness that you gained, so
Exactly.
maybe a couple of points.
Okay. Yeah, this all looks fine. And look at this thickness over here. I think this is going to be a tough fight for black, right? Obviously, if white just plays here, this is not using thickness properly. Like, we have so much strength here, just capturing this one stone is going to be worth it. We need to attack larger. So maybe we try something like this. We have strength over here, we have strength over here, we have strength over here. Even if we don't get anything, even if we don't kill this one stone, we'll build up strength so that we can, imagine if something like this happens, right? We'll say, say white, say black lives here. Just hypothetically, say black lives here. With all these extra stones here, we now have a much better chance of getting territory in this area. And that's how you use influence, right? You don't use influence to kill, you use influence to get territory. And so by sealing in this black group, I get a stronger position over here to potentially build up territory. So I think that playing a move so close to white's thickness here is a little bit questionable. Maybe playing far away from the stone and allowing black to jump here is a little questionable. Something in this general area might be a little bit better. It's okay if black connects out as long as we got some compensation over here. And now we built up a framework over here. So. Yeah, in this way, I think it's just a little bit too easy for black to live. I think white maybe should back off right now. Get this move over here, builds up a nice framework, and then later on, white can consider trying to separate these stones here. By playing here, you're basically guaranteeing that black's going to be able to connect up. Yeah, and so here it's very clear that black is as not only alive, but it's connected and made some actual territory here as well. But white came back and played the big move at c10, and so it's using its influence correctly, right? It's used its influence to attack, and by attacking, it was able to get territory. So I don't think, so even though this wasn't a great result for white, I think it ended up turning out okay. So I see we're at the top of the hour almost. Patrick or Milan, were there any questions, anything I went over? I don't know if it makes sense to go too much further, but.
No, I think it was pretty good explaining how the influence worked out. And at the end, white did build territory by just attacking.
Yeah. And black didn't gain all that much, right? Black connected out, maybe gained an extra 5 or so points, but white
black
gained...
just lived. Black was
exactly.
Just like, I want my miserable life. That's it.
Yeah. So this ends up being quite a nice result for white.